Good evening. I would like to welcome everybody to the November 12th meeting of the New Bern Board of Aldermen. Tonight the prayer will be given by Alderwoman Jamisha Harris.
Let us bow our heads. God, as we gather today at this meeting, we ask that you will be in our midst. Help us to make decisions that will be pleasing to you. Help us to be able to discuss the matters at hand in a reasonable way and to be willing to give up having our own way. God, let this meeting be productive and as should be in the case as all areas of our life. Help us to keep you at the forefront of our minds and as we do the work set before us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag of our country? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bingle. Here. Alderwoman Harris.
Present.
Alderman Astor.
Here.
Mayor Outlaw.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey. Alderman Best.
Present.
Alderman Odom.
Here.
Okay, this time the first order of business is everybody good with the agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
We're going to go to requests of petitions first. I just want to make sure if you had any changes you wanted to make in the agenda. We're going the first person on the petitions is Jennifer Dugan. You'd like to come forward and address the board? And yes, ma'am, right there, and name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Dugan. I live at 2401B Meadowbrook Avenue, New Bern, North Carolina.
Yes, ma'am.
Since I was a young child, I suffered from severe migraines. Since that time, and for about the last 25, 30 years, I've also been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, myofascial pain complex, which causes severe muscle pain and cramping at inopportune times, like walking. I also have high blood pressure and TMJ, which is also known as lockjaw, which all contribute to those migraines. I moved here the day before Florence from Colorado Springs, Colorado, where when I was living there, it was recommended that I try cannabis for these issues because with the fibromyalgia, the myofascial pain, the TMJ, a lot of that has to do with how tight things are and how restricted the blood vessels get. I did, and I was able to get off most of my medications. Since moving here, I don't have that opportunity, and I'm slowly seeing my medication regimen raise again. My doctor's amazing, but I'd really not like to be back on all of that if I don't have to be. And so for that reason, I'm here to ask you to consider that cannabis legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next petition is from Jonathan Hobbs.
Jonathan Hobbs, 2063 South Glen Burnie. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about a topic that I'm very passionate about. I'm a native North Carolinian. I'm a part owner of a business here in New Bern. I'm an employee of a local furniture business as well. I'm a father of 3, and just by looking at me, you would never be able to tell I have an incurable pain-causing disease called hidradenitis suppurativa. My body just randomly decides to make cysts in my groin, in my spine, and in my hairline. And they could be tiny, they can be the size of a golf ball. There's nothing that dictates it. Currently, in North Carolina, I have 2 options. I can go on opiates, and we see where we are today with opiates. I don't need to get into any details with that. Or every time I have a flare-up, I can go to a physician and be cut open, exposing myself to staph and MRSA. This can happen multiple times a week, multiple weeks a month. And every time I walk into the hospital to have it addressed, I'm just rolling the dice again. Back in 2012, I lived in Colorado, and for the first time it was suggested to me by a doctor to try cannabis. I had bought into the lies for years about the stigma of cannabis, about You know, I didn't want to get high. Why are you suggesting cannabis? I don't want to sit on my couch and not get anything done. And he said, no, you know, here's some research behind it. Just give it a shot. Because I was going to him every day in a week sometimes. And after some talking and some researching, I decided to finally try cannabis, and I can't even begin to describe the changes on my disease it had that none of the steroid shots and antibiotics and painkillers had before. When you're on painkillers, all you think about is the painkillers. When's my next dose? How much more am I getting? Is something going to come up at my next appointment that's going to prevent this from happening as the prescription shrank and the regulations tightened because of how harmful they are? When I started taking cannabis on a regular basis, my disease settled down. I started seeing maybe 1 or 2 cysts a month, and the size had decreased. In 2014, I moved back to North Carolina because I was born out here and this is my home. And that option was taken from me. Whenever I have a flare-up now, I can't play with my kids. I can't go to work. I can't walk when these things pop up. And due to recent legislation, the hemp farming bill is being limited in North Carolina. SB 315, passed in North Carolina, will make smokable hemp illegal as of June 1st, 2020. I ask you, how is that fair? That in 2018, when that bill was passed, hemp was made legal here in North Carolina. I was finally given, albeit a lesser alternative, an option other than MRSA, other than painkillers, that allows me to be the father, the citizen, the taxpayer that I want to be. I never once asked to be born with this disease. I want to contribute. I don't want this to be a limiting factor. And through the use of cannabis, I can be a regular citizen like any of you. However, because our law enforcement cannot tell whether you have legal hemp or illegal marijuana in your car, we're going to regress and make hemp illegal again. Please consider this.
Okay,
Thank you.
sir. Thank you. Maxwell Devon Oglesby.
Maxwell Oglesby, 2506 Montgomery Court. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here again as a small business owner, veteran, and once again, cannabis advocate. Here to ask for your support in making medical marijuana a reality here in North Carolina. What a better place to start a grassroots movement, pun intended, than in a place that was literally the first capital of this state. I'm here tonight to discuss with some of you what a few problems have arose and been brought to our attention at their last meeting. Some people worry about the public consumption, smell, and stigma that comes along with medical cannabis. Well, to put you at ease, legal states don't allow public intoxication or public consumption of any type of cannabis product, just like alcohol is and is considered here in this great state. You can consume safely in the privacy of your own home, but just like alcohol, no public consumption. Another issue that other people's brought up at our last meeting was DWIs, driving under the influence, traffic citations, and how those have gone up. I'm not asking for recreational. I'm not asking for y'all to do any of that. What I'm asking for is for medical cannabis to come here to those who are in need. Those who are in need are not operating dangerous motor vehicles underneath their current medication, Zoloft, Wellbutrin, things like that. So these people wouldn't do anything else. Other health risks have been brought up. Increase in schizophrenia for heavy smokers, temporary loss of development of learning, temporary small memory loss, things like that. Even heart and lung issues with smoking, heavy use. But what about the issues along with heavy use of alcohol? Liver disease, seizures, brain damage, even death, or opioids in this nation, let alone our state. 2,000 people were killed, over 2,000 people were killed for deaths of opioid overdose in 2017. 0 cannabis deaths. But it's still illegal. I've heard that some think that this is something for our state representatives to take care of, for us to voice our opinion to them. and I agree that is correct. But you're elected to hear us out, to listen to our wants and reflect those wants and needs to higher levels, to lead us to a better future for New Bern and its residents. We can't go to Congressman Greg Murphy without the support of our local government. Times before this, our local aldermen have passed resolutions in support of state legislation, such as Ban the Box, where unanimously this board came together and voted to support it and join other cities as Charlotte, Wilmington, and others in the support for felons having a second chance on a job application. And I'm just asking for the same treatment for cannabis. Just like last month, I stated I would continue to attend these meetings to educate, inform, and implore you to support cannabis reform in New Bern, North Carolina. And again, I want to let each of you know that I'm available to speak with you privately or openly about this issue. But I want to leave you with a quote from one of you on this board that really touched me personally about this. It is most vital that we work together to serve citizens with dignity and respect. I am calling on you to come together, be present, be heard, take action, and work together to create a harmonious city that can only become even greater than it already is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean Kramer?
Mr. Mayor, Honorable Alderman, some of you know me, some of you don't. My name is Sean Kramer. I live out in Craven County out there. I'm not a New Bern resident. I do have an extensive background in 33 years in law enforcement. I've also got an extensive medical background. I was a National Registered paramedic, firefighter for 40 years. Why am I here to speak is on the not so much the THC, but the CBD aspect. As a police officer, I was constantly very negative and any kind of narcotics use out there. If I caught you, I busted you. It's very simple on there. Until about 10 years ago when I injured my back to the point where I had to induce major surgery. The pain was incredible on there. I've been shot in the military. I'm a disabled vet. I know what pain feels like out there. A friend of mine, another Navy corpsman on there, which I was a Navy corpsman, bought over some stuff and try it on there. It works for the rest of the vets. It was the only thing to relieve the pain enough to get the surgery. Over the past 10 years, after the surgery, I had developed severe blood clots through my entire body. I cannot take normal over-the-counter medications, aspirin, Tylenol, any of that stuff because of the amount of blood thinners I'm on. I'm on constant pain medication. I've been so on this oxycodone roller coaster for over 10 years, and I'm so tired of it on there. It was suggested to me by my doctor and another surgeon, who's my primary orthopedic surgeon. I asked him his opinion on OCD or CBD, and he kind of gave me a wink. He wouldn't, positive or negative out there, and I tried it. And I'm here to tell you it is the only thing that makes me sleep at night. I don't cry anymore. I don't, it is amazing. Is it a gateway drug? Yes, it is a gateway drug. It's a gateway to get off codeine on there. And I said, I'm 100% behind it. I have a son who has severe seizure disorder. He had a stroke at 18 months old. He has 3 to 4 strokes or seizures a week. His doctors also tried and suggested CBD. It's cut his seizures down unbelievable. He can live a normal family life on there. I said, I understand the law enforcement aspect on there. These kids are not going out here buying this stuff out there to get high on, because you don't get high on it. Those of us in our age bracket, we know that it's always been taught not to, you don't do drugs, you don't do this, you don't do that. Until you need it, and you try it, and it is a different alternative. And that's what we need, is a different alternative, not just handing out codeine all the time on there. It's ruining these communities. New Bern has always been looked at as a leader in North Carolina, all the way across, going back. And most of you know I work for the Palace, so I've got some good history on it. New Bern has been the leader be proactive in studying this issue and its effect, and not just condemning it to it's another drug on there. It does work for, I run the Craven Wounded Warrior program here in the county. I deal with strictly the combat wounded Purple Heart veterans. I bring them out, and we hunt. John Thomas, you all know he's a builder. We hunt and we take these guys fishing, and they say the same thing. It's the only thing that works for us. It's the only thing that stops the pain to where we can function properly, without being stoned, without fear. And again, it's not the kids. Thank you very much. It's not the kids doing this stuff. It's the adults and the people in medical who need it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this time we have consent agenda.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to the consent agenda as is.
Second.
Motion second, is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion carries. Item number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 7 is a presentation on Wreaths across America. Mr. Kevin Yates is here tonight to provide us a brief presentation on Wreaths across America. There's a wreath laying ceremony that's planned to take place at our National Cemetery in Newbern on December the 14th, 2019. So at this turn, I'll turn over to Mr. Yates.
Good evening, Mayor, Board. My name is Kevin Yates. I am the location coordinator for Wreaths Across America at the National Cemetery here in Newbern. This is our 10th year of participating in Wreaths Across America for Newbern. Each year it has grown incrementally, and last year was the very first year that we actually covered every single headstone in the Newbern National Cemetery. There are 6,772 headstones in Newbern National Cemetery. It's the largest national cemetery in the state of North Carolina. So accomplishing that last year was an incredible feat. It was very powerful for the folks that were there and were able to participate in it. This photo here is one of my favorites. It speaks to the over 1,000 unknowns that we have buried in our cemetery. It's another challenge that we face because there isn't a direct family line of somebody that's going to step in and make sure that those headstones receive a wreath. It takes just community support and just honest hard work of trying to fundraise and collect enough to be able to get enough wreaths for all of them. There are several different phases of how Wreaths Across America works. I'm a volunteer. Most of us are all volunteers in the entire Wreaths Across America organization. We don't get paid anything. We just do it because we enjoy the organization and participating in the program. We work all year long. We go out to the farmers market. We go to the Mumfest and set up booths, and we just try and fundraise and do what we can. We also do a wreath delivery. This will be our 3rd year that we will do a escort. We go out, we meet the trucks that are bringing the wreaths in from Maine and guide them all the way through town out to the National Cemetery. It's grown as the program has incrementally each year, and so again, this will be our 3rd year to be able to do that. We bring them right down Broad Street, and it's a really awesome sight, and then head right down into the National Cemetery. All volunteers are there to unload the trucks, to stage the wreaths, get everything ready. Again, we're all just there because we love the program and we love to being involved in it. Then December 14th this year on Saturday, we'll place the wreaths. It brings out all kinds of people. It bridges generations and backgrounds. Right now, we're seeing issues with the VFW, the American Legion, and many of the other veteran service organizations of being able to connect to the OIF and OEF veterans like myself and how we get those involved. Wreaths Across America doesn't have that problem. We get kids out there, we get Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, we get reenactors, we get all sorts of folks that come out there and want to participate in Wreaths Across America. It is an awesome, awesome event. Hundreds of volunteers show up to come out, take a time, and place a wreath. And we tell them, we educate them that when they place the wreath, to say the veteran's name as they place it. The slogan is that a veteran is not forgotten as long as their name is spoken. So each year we speak their names. Then we do the cleanup. And that'll be mid-January, late January, depends on the weather. Last year we had to do a little early because we didn't have a really cold December or January. But again, we get kids that come out there and help us do cleanup. It's not just 10, 15 volunteers that show up. We have hundreds of volunteers that show up, and it bridges different ages and backgrounds. So how do we make this happen? I have 4 requests that I'm here for today. That's why I'm here speaking with you today. We would like to do the escort on December 12th. We need the support from the police department and the fire department to do that. We also need on December 14th the police department for traffic control and for crowd control, because when you bring 500 people into a small area, we just want to make sure that we can control it, make sure that only good things are happening. As you all know, parking around the National Cemetery is a disaster, and the neighborhood around it isn't created or it wasn't designed to work as overflow, even though we often use it as that. But the folks over at Roost Chapel at Simmons and Oaks Road have graciously offered us to use their parking lot again this year, but we need buses just to be able to move people from Roost Chapel up to the cemetery and back. And then when the cleanup time comes in January, again, we need dumpsters just to dispose of the wreaths. Last year, we actually tried to recycle the wreaths and see what we could do, but when you start talking about thousands of wreaths and how they come and how they're prepared, it would take an enormous number of man hours to disassemble them and dispose of them any other way. So typically we've done dumpsters and we just dispose of the wreaths, and the city has been graciously provided that for us, because again, we're just volunteers. We don't have a budget. We don't have any money. We come to you just asking for the city's support for this great program that continues to grow each and every year. So that's why I'm here for today.
Mr. Stevens, is that basically about what we did last year? Do you recall?
Yes, sir. This is pretty much in line with everything that we did and assisted them with last year, and have for several years now. Especially the dumpster. I think the escort part came in about 2 to 3 years ago. I think.
Yes, sir.
Correct. And all the other stuff has kind of been a staple that we've always helped with.
Would it be the board's pleasure to continue this year?
Yes,
Sure.
absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Yates, for the presentation, and I'll see you on December 14th and volunteer.
Looking forward to it.
It will be a joy to volunteer. I know my husband is a veteran, so anything that I can do to help support our veterans, I'm there to help them. So I look forward to that, and thank you again.
Mr. Yates, could you, so our families at home can listen to this as well, tell people how they can donate a wreath, what they can do to purchase one of the wreaths to put on the graves?
Absolutely. The easiest way is we have a Facebook page, Wreaths Across America, New Bern. If you can go on the Facebook page, we provide we provide a link to go on there, and then also we have events so that they can click on those events so that Facebook will remind them. But then also you can go to wreathsacrossamerica.org and then sponsor them. But be sure to search for the New Bern National Cemetery. If you just go on there and click sponsor a wreath, it could go to any of the cemeteries across the country that are participating. And while that's equally important, we want to try and focus our efforts on New Bern.
What's the requested amount?
$6,707.
No, I mean the donation for
Oh,
wreaths.
$15 each.
$15.
And they're live wreaths that come all the way from Maine. That's
Alderman Odom?
She answered. I wanted to share with how anybody could buy one, so thank you.
Are they already with the boat as well?
yes, they come as they are. They come in boxes of 9, and we'll unload them, stage them throughout the cemetery, and place them.
How are you selling most of them? Do you sell most of them through on the internet, or?
I would say yes to that. We sold a lot at Mumfest. We had a really good year with Mumfest this year, and we sold a lot. But at the same time, you have to rent a booth and everything else. It costs money to make money, and so we do a lot of online sales. We'll be out at Mitchell's Hardware on the 23rd of this month, and again, that's another big push. We set up a booth in front of Mitchell's, and
Because I know you need to get your total by what cutoff date?
December 2nd.
December 2nd.
3 weeks from yesterday.
Yeah, there's been a lot of public interest in this, but the public's been a little confused. I think they actually thought some of this was going to happen yesterday with the Temple Baptist Church luncheon, and I told them I knew it was in December, but I'm glad you're here to make everybody aware publicly what's going on.
We actually had considered setting up a booth there at Temple and trying to sponsor more wreaths there, and then it was kind of a question of whether it was appropriate or not, so
Right.
we opted not to.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And anything we can do, city, as far as our peg channel, or anything else we're doing, please let us help you, because we do want every one of those markers out there to have a wreath on it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 8.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 8 is a presentation on the minimum housing code enforcement and nuisance abatement processes. At the request of the board, staff is here tonight to present on the minimum housing and nuisance abatement processes. Mr. Ruggieri, our Director of Development Services, is here tonight. He's going to provide you a quick presentation and answer any kind of questions that you may have regarding these two topics.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Jeff Ruggieri with Development Services. I'll be presenting tonight on minimum housing and code enforcement, our processes. So I just take a step back, and we are granted authority to regulate minimum housing and housing conditions from the General Assembly through state statute. That references 160A.441, and it finds that there are dwellings that are unfit for human habitation in cities, and that they are unsafe, unsanitary, dangerous, and detrimental to health, safety, and morals, general welfare of the city. In addition, that same statute finds that the city can create an ordinance that can provide for the repair, closing, and demolition of any abandoned structure within the city that the city finds to be hazardous, dangerous, and otherwise unsanitary. Furthermore, that ordinance that's adopted by the city can provide that a public officer may determine that the dwelling is unfit. So we have the minimum housing officer and the chief building official that fill that role. That's granted to us, our authority granted through state statute. And in the ordinance, those defective conditions, they can include anything that involves hazards as related to fire, accidents, lack of adequate ventilation, light, sanitary facilities, dilapidation, disrepair, and any other structural defects. So from that authority granted us from the state, we have Chapter 38 in our Code of Ordinances, which is our minimum housing ordinance. And the purpose of this chapter is to establish those minimum standards of fitness for the initial and continued occupancy of all buildings used for human habitation in the city. I believe it was passed in 71. Section 3829 is that procedure, how we start enforcement and the initial investigation. Section 3829 creates the parameters whereby the minimum housing officer can investigate a minimum housing violation. Here are some of the, in the ordinance itself, this is ordinance language in front of you, how we can start an investigation. The minimum housing officer, these are some of the things that they can look for when we're looking at assessing the minimum standards of a structure, of a residential structure: foundation, walls, both interior and exterior, roofs, porches, stair steps, ceilings, and floors. Minimum housing officer can also investigate basic equipment and facilities, such as plumbing, the plumbing systems, heating systems, electricals, and the existence and functionality of smoke detectors in a home.
Can I ask a question, Jeff?
Sure.
It's been my understanding, and I don't know if this is correct or not, that if somebody doesn't have electric, they can still live in the house. It's just if the water isn't on. Is that correct?
That is
when
correct.
It says electric.
Yeah, it could be the way it's wired or the safety involved in it. Correct.
But they don't have to have electrical service.
They don't have to have electric service. Correct.
Okay, but they have to have water.
They have to have water.
Okay,
yes.
just wanted to make sure I was correct.
I don't think I'm jumping ahead of you, but under Chapter 38, if a house has a gas stove or gas water heater or gas heat, would you not want a carbon monoxide detector also in addition to those? Or is that in another section? Or does that?
That might be building code, it's not in our ordinance,
Okay.
I just pulled it right out of there. This is our ordinance language. And I'm not sure that that's required, but I'll look into that, I'll get you that answer.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just asking as you're going through this, is that something that needs to be added, or are we already covered on that? Danny, you would know.
Currently, the building code does require it under the residential code if the appliance is upgraded. But there is nothing in the code right now to retroact for those that don't do any kind of,
They're grandfathered in,
yes,
is that
already
what you're saying?
grandfathered in.
So you.
Except if it's rental, right, Danny?
Even if it's rental, unless they upgrade the appliances, once they upgrade the appliances and they pull the permit to do that, the building inspector will make sure that a carbon monoxide detector is in place at that time.
And so, just for public consumption here, if you have a fire detector in the kitchen, it's going to activate too much. So where do you generally like, how close to the kitchen do you like a detector, and where do you like a carbon monoxide detector in a home? Again, probably depending on the appliance and.
Sure, it depends on where the gas appliances are at, but you want them on every floor of the house, every level. If you have a two-story house, one on each level, you want the smoke detectors outside and inside of each bedroom. And the carbon monoxide detectors, you want those, they can be anywhere in the house as far as wall outlets or on the ceiling, because carbon monoxide is neutral to the air, so it mixes evenly.
Okay, thank you.
The minimum housing officer can also investigate the presence of adequate ventilation. This is right from our code, and that every habitable room shall have at least one window or skylight that directly faces to the outdoors. And again, if anyone has any questions during this time, please feel free to stop. Absolutely fine to answer questions. Minimum housing officer can also investigate room sizes and ensure that they meet minimum code. I'm not going to rattle all this off, but this is just trying to give a good overview of exactly what our minimum housing officer looks at when they are fielding a complaint. Section 3860 are more standards for what a habitable area must have. It has adequate ceiling height. We look at floor area calculation, and that goes back to determining what is a habitable room and what is not. And there's standards for cellars and basements. Cellars can't be used for living purposes, and basements can't be used for living purposes unless they meet certain criteria, one of which is having a window. There's also standards for waterproofing and weatherproofing for all homes, and also standards for control of insects, rodents, and other infestations. For instance, screens are required on all windows. Not having a screen on your window is a violation of minimum building code. Owners are responsible for rodent and rodent control and other infestation type thing. That comes into play a lot with rentals. And every home is required to have a garbage disposal, whether it be mechanical or an incinerator. I just had to say that because I'd love to have an incinerator, but I just have a regular mechanical one.
Every home is required to have a garbage disposal?
Correct. Or an incinerator.
For new homes that are built, I guess there's a lot of grandfathered homes.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Interesting.
So now we're into procedure and how we handle complaints. So if the minimum housing officer finds a violation, of Section 3829 establishes the procedure on how that violation is enforced. The first thing we do is a little outside of this scope is we send a 10-day letter. That initial letter is essentially a courtesy letter. It keeps us outside of the legal process at this point in time, but it's a 10-day letter that instructs the owner of the property to contact us and set up a meeting with us to discuss what the violations are. During that time, we'll schedule an inspection of the property and confirm if the violation exists or not. And if it does exist, we will sit down and bang out an action plan on how to come into compliance. and give them a certain time frame to do so. I would say most of the times that letter is all that's required, and owners come into compliance. Sometimes we receive no responses from property owners, or they do respond and then they don't follow through on what they're going to say. At that point in time, we schedule what's called a hearing before the chief building inspector, and that's a formal process.
Jeff, let me ask you a question,
Sure.
please. So you're stating that this enforcement for the housing procedure right here is for new homes?
No, this is all homes.
All homes?
Yes, ma'am.
So are you saying that if you receive a complaint from a citizen,
Mhm.
then this is when this enforcement is?
Sure. So
Okay.
we'll receive a complaint, or or the building, or somehow we'll find out about a violation. The minimum housing officer will then inspect it. If it's exterior, go take a look and see, which is usually 99% of the time. That's what it is. And so then we'll contact that owner and just schedule a meeting to just talk about what the issue, if there is an issue. We will ask to enter the property if that's what's required. So then we start that way with just a conversation, essentially.
So you're telling me that you would have someone from your office go out and inspect the neighborhoods to see if these homes are in compliance? Is that the process you're going to use, or just going to be by complaint driven? Or?
We're complaint driven.
Okay.
This whole process is
Okay.
complaint driven.
All right, thank you.
There's no proactive minimum housing enforcement.
Thank you.
Okay, so if the owner is not responsive to our initial letter, then we will send another 10-day letter, essentially, scheduling a hearing before the chief building official. We'll conduct that hearing, and it's essentially the same process, identifying what the violation is, identifying what steps need to be taken to remedy the violation, and then establishing a time frame to do so. That's called the order of the here. Hold on, where's my other stuff? There it is. Sorry. Order of the building official. And the most important part of that is during that time, the order identifies if the property is deteriorated or dilapidated, and that does have some importance later in the process itself. So a deteriorated home essentially is instructed to comply with the minimum standards, and that's just to alter and improve the development. So they need to do something to come into compliance, and through the opinion of the chief building official, they'll be able to do that, and then they identify what steps need to happen. So I just use the window screens as an easy example. There's no window screens. A deteriorated order would say, put window screens in, and then everything would be done. Other things could be, very small, like water intrusion, things like that, steps that are rotted a little bit. These are things that are considered deteriorated, as opposed to dilapidated. So if the order finds that the structure is dilapidated, then the owner is required, in order to demolish and remove the building from the property. So that's what you guys see for the most part in front of you, is orders of dilapidated structures. And then we go forward and ask for an ordinance to demolish them. If you failure to comply with an order, if it is a deteriorated order from the building official, then the city is within its right to make whatever repairs are required in order to bring it into compliance. If it's dilapidated, that's when we file for the demolition order, and we cause the building to be demolished and removed. I underline the bottom. It's very clear in our ordinance that no such ordinance of demolition shall be adopted to require demolition of a dwelling until the owner has been given a reasonable opportunity to bring it into conformity with housing code. As you can see from the many that we bring before the board in the past, we have years and years and years of meetings and correspondence with owners in order to bring these properties into compliance. Sometimes it's over 10 years where we're trying to keep the property and not tear it down. But again, that safety net is built into the ordinance itself. We also have a non-residential building construction code. That's Chapter 39. That deals specifically with commercial buildings. So Days Hotel went through this process. Insomnia went through this process also. It's essentially the same process that I described to you for residential structures, except that the commercial code has a little more protections for industrial properties, essentially, that go vacant. So the next slide is going to be, I'll talk about nuisance abatement. So is there any questions on how we handle minimum housing?
Well, along the lines of this, and I appreciate making everybody aware of this, but one big thing, and I know you guys deal with it, and it's a little bit, we're interested as a board, particularly in some of these houses that the roofs are just pure imploding, you know, getting them down. And of course we have the legal issue of absentee ownership or whatever, and properly noticing and all that. But I think one thing important for the board and the public to know, if you ride down the road and see an in-ground pool or above ground pool and it's not properly fenced, in my understanding of your inspection department, if according to the Department of Insurance, which I think is really the person that you need to be in compliance with, that if you install a rear door detector that the door has opened, that you can circumvent the fence.
Correct.
But I think you need to spend a minute and tell the public about pools and what is required of your office. Because to me, the city allows, and I think their mea culpa is the Department of Insurance, I think says you can get away with this rear door detection, so that if you have a 2-year-old child that opens the door, you know that a 2-year-old child might go get in the pool. And I think that's great for the owner or the tenant, but it doesn't speak much for the next door neighbor's child that opens the rear door and walks over next door and jumps in the pool and drowns. So could you talk about that for just a moment?
I'll have to look into that a little more, but that's my understanding of how we regulate it. The only time we get involved with pools is when they become more of a nuisance, where people not taking care of them. We've ordered many pools be drained and filled because they become a nuisance. But as far as you're correct in your assessment of
and different counties have different interpretations of it. One county is like, as long as the manufacturer says that it's a surround above ground pool and that it's got a gate. Well, if a kid goes up with a knife and pokes the side of that above ground pool and about 10,000 gallons of water come out, you might wish that you have a fence around it. But anyway, I won't belabor that.
I'll look into that specifically and provide the board an update on what the specific rules are. And
well, they're interpreted different amongst different counties, trust me.
Yeah.
And municipalities.
You could just email those updates to us.
I will do that.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Okay. So on to nuisances. So chapter 26 of our Code of Ordinances deals with nuisances, and chapter 26, sub 26 deals with the conditions of what a nuisance is. And I'll get to it in my own thing so I don't lose Bob. So obviously, uncontrolled growth, grasses, tall grass and weeds, the accumulation of animal and vegetable matter that's offensive by virtue of odors, junk, rubbish, trash, anything else that accumulates stagnant water, as we just talked about, or anything that could be considered a fire hazard, or anything that could support snakes, mice, and rats. Other conditions that would constitute a nuisance are clotheslines. Clotheslines in the primary area of visual concern and in front of your home is considered a nuisance. And The section under that is our newest nuisance. That's the graffiti language that we added a few years ago. That identifies graffiti as a nuisance that must be abated. This is the process for investigating a graffiti. It's a little different than the other stuff. And this is that we coordinate with the police department, specifically with graffiti, and inform them of when we have a graffiti situation. They have their own process for dealing with that, and the owner is then required to remove the graffiti. Haven't had a graffiti issue in a few years now, thank God. So all other nuisances receive a 15-day compliance letter that identifies what that violation is from the list that I stated earlier, and instructs the property owner to abate whatever that violation is, whatever that nuisance is, within 15 days. If it's not abated, the city has the right to enter the property and abate the nuisance. That cost of the abatement will be billed to the property owner, and if not paid within 30 days, is collected as a lien on the property. And that's 26-29 deals with all that. And that's it for nuisances. Not quite as exciting as minimum housing, but if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Well, back on bat, I want to talk about bats for a minute. Several of these homes around New Bern that this board would like demolished, that we don't seem to legally be able to do that, have large, I don't know the term for the domicile of a bat, but there's a bunch of them in some of these houses.
A bat cave.
And bat cave. So, it's very expensive to abate them from your home or your building, and I just feel a little bit remiss as an elected official that I don't know that we're doing our part, that it's kind of like fire ants. If you can get rid of yours, but your neighbor's going to get them, and you're going to get them right back when he does something about them. And I don't know that the city of New Bern is on top of our game as far as that situation, which there's quite a few of those in New Bern. If anybody else wants to comment on that.
They're a problem downtown.
Well,
It's been a really bad problem downtown with a lot of people. But, Jeff, it's my concern because I get this question all the time. One of the reasons I wanted you to come and do this presentation, I get this, well, how come we've torn this down? And this house is sitting here falling down. It's obvious that it was in worse shape than the one we've torn down. Why haven't we torn that one down? So can you help our citizens understand it is a process, and if we can't legally contact the property owners, then we can't tear down. Is that correct? Is that pretty much how it works?
To an extent, absolutely correct. And that is the reason why when you have that situation where we do tear down a home that doesn't look as bad as a shape as the one next to it, it's most likely, and I say most likely, probably 100% of the time, it's because we're having problems with locating the owners and getting them served legally, that the home is going to be torn down. And that's a legal process. Scott deals with it all the time. Some of these homes have hundreds and hundreds of owners that need to be noticed when we're going forward and tearing down a home, and is a long legal process, and we can't find owners. You can point to a house, and we have a file that's probably 8 inches thick.
Pretty much, we can't do anything. It basically would have to fall down before we could do anything about it.
Yeah,
In a lot of cases, it brings rodents and other
Correct.
Bad things to the home, and it should at least be boarded up. Is that correct? If it's not boarded up, then the city can go in there,
We can board it up.
and
Yes,
then
ma'am.
attach a lien to the
Yeah.
property. Is that correct?
Correct. And some of our worst offenders are city county owned, and there's some county issues as far as on their end. We went through that process a few years ago of going through the 5 or 6 big offenders that we had in the city, and the county still has some work to do on their end in order for them to clear that pathway. But if anyone has any concerns, they feel free to contact my office, and if we can take it through the process, we most definitely will.
Attorney Davis, In this instance, if you have a property that you cannot contact the owners of the property and it's dilapidated and, can't you put that property, I'm quite sure if you can't contact the owners and the taxes are not getting paid, so can't you put that property in foreclosure?
We do.
To remedy that situation?
Yes, ma'am. And we're talking about this in a very simplified fashion. When we say we can't find the owner, what we mean is we can't identify the owners from a century ago. If the taxes haven't been paid, we can foreclose. However, we've still got to find people to file a lawsuit against to foreclose. And that's where it becomes circular. So whether you pursue the unfit dwelling process where you have to identify the precise owners, great-great-great-grandchildren, or we file a lawsuit to foreclose, still got to identify the actual owners. So given the two choices, I always recommend taking the tax foreclosure path because that results in the city and county owning the property. So the problem is not necessarily finding the owner. If a person owns a property and they acquired it in the last 10, 20 years, we can typically find them or at least find the last city they were in. And if we can find the last city they were in, we can publish notice, and that's not a problem. So it's not that we can't find them. We can serve them even if we can't find them. The problem is we can't identify who they are. And that is what is just incredibly expensive to untangle. And the two or three that I'm aware of that have been linked for the last several years are those rare cases where we've just lost ownership for a century and we're trying to track everyone down.
Well, having said that, it seemed to me like if they're that hard to find, then they would be that hard to find us to sue us. And from that angle, if you've got to spend $100,000 in attorney fees to finally get these 20 houses down, I'd rather go and knock them down and let them sue us if they want to. It probably wouldn't cost as much as the title searches are going to cost to tear the stuff down. Plus, while you are sitting here, for all the time I've been in New Bern, not knocking these houses down, you're keeping investment from happening in those areas.
Right.
And the cost, if it was $100,000 or $200,000, you'll get collateral good at it, out of getting 100 housing starts that people are like, I think I'll invest over here now that I'm not afraid that house is going to fall down on me, or this one's going to burn down, or these people are going to do drugs over here because this is boarded up. I say knock them down. Sue us if you want to, but I'm not trying to be callous about it, but
I would recommend it. And just to put it in perspective, I'm aware of 2 or 3 in that category. I'm not aware of 20. I'm aware of 2 or 3.
I'll be glad to ride you around tomorrow because I can think of a good 20 of them need to be knocked down. Alderman Odom, do you have something?
Is there it depends on, again, how many there actually are. Is there a bonding process that we could put a bond up and?
No. And again, it's been my experience that when there are dozens that have not been torn down, it's just a question of the city budgeting the demolition funds to go do it. It's not a question that we're not legally ready. Most of these are legally ready to be torn down. It's just a question of how many hundreds of thousands of dollars do you want to spend doing it. Again, I'm aware of 2 or 3 that are any given year, there are 2 or 3 that are troublesome. And one goes off the list every year and a new one comes on. So any given year, there's 2 or 3. But beyond those 2 or 3, it's just a matter of getting a list of development services and finding the money to go knock them down.
I thought there was at one point in time when we had a previous board had a meeting with the county, and there were a couple dozen that were city county jointly owned, and we were trying to decide which side was going to take the legal aspect of it.
Well, the county has always acquiesced and said, hey, we'll give you our interest, you knock it down. That's always been, I just got to ask, that they've always been incredibly helpful in that respect.
So is it possible we can get an updated list, and if there's over a dozen, we go ahead and figure out if we want to allocate money to go ahead and get them demolished?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, Alderman Bingham, you had one a couple months ago that burnt down, and there's all kind of debris all laying around there, and I think you hadn't jumped on it.
Right. Mr. Brown brought it to my attention. It was a burnt out house, and it was unboarded up, and kids could get in it. Somebody could get hurt across the street from a church. The debris was in the middle of the road, and, you know, it was a danger, and it should either be torn up, but I guess I called about it, and again, it was a matter of, okay, we have to contact the owners.
Yeah,
The owners
it's in the
have
process.
10 days or
Yep.
whatever to board it up, but in the meantime, somebody could have gotten in there and gotten killed, so I was concerned about it.
Yeah, typically for fires, they board them up immediately. Once everything's abated, they secure the site, let it cool down, and secure it.
How long that been sitting there like that?
Mr. Brown, how long was that sitting there? At least 2 weeks, right?
It's been about 3 months, and debris and everything is still in the street.
Uh-huh.
Residents are having to repair their car. That's why the Samson brought it to my attention.
Yeah.
We still haven't gotten any relief
It's not
yet.
boarded up either, is it?
It's just been boarded up about 2 weeks.
Okay.
You can't get investment, you can't get people wanting to build nice homes if you
Yeah, but
don't
that's
help
We're
out.
really not concerned about the building right now. We need the debris out of the street. People are having to go and repair their cars. Are they having spoliation because of nails going into their tires? And that's what I'm getting every week. They're coming to me every week.
There's no legal issue with that. These are not legal issues, just to go get it.
Does Matt know the address? So he
Yeah,
can,
no, that,
I'll send it to you again.
correct. We have an ordinance, we have a demolition ordinance on that. We have a dilapidated order that needs to expire. You know, I understand the concern,
Well,
obviously.
let me just
It's,
pose this to the board right now. I don't know what our fund balance is. I haven't asked in the last week or two, but if it's sufficient, I'm ready to do a budget amendment and do some demolition myself. Now, y'all,
Mayor,
We
this
have money.
came up a few years ago, and I think we asked, was there enough money in the budget? We were
Correct.
told that based upon what we have the ability to do
Mhm.
and what's been cleared from a legal standpoint, we were budgeting that amount.
correct.
Okay.
We are budgeted to demolish buildings. We probably have about $40,000 right now.
I think we had to do a budget amendment when we knocked the big one down out by you, didn't we, Mark?
Correct, yes,
I think the mayor's looking for, when is it gonna happen?
correct.
All right.
Next year, beginning of next year?
Yeah, trying to remember, I think the order expires on the 27th.
Okay,
Okay.
awesome. Sounds good to me.
Thank you.
Do you got anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Item number 9, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Item number 9 is consideration of the board to adopt a resolution requesting improvements to County Line Road. At the request of the Board of Aldermen on the 22nd of October, a resolution has been prepared to request NCDOT improve and pave the portion of County Line Road that lies within the municipal city limits of New Bern. That portion of the roadway is currently gravel from the point of Old Airport Road to Wilcox Road. It's actually County Line Road's gravel the entire length except for the portion where it ties into Wilcox Road and then becomes paved. But the section that we're interested in as far as improvements to County Line Road that we've requested from DOT will be from Old Airport Road to that intersection at Wilcox. Making these improvements obviously will not only improve the access to the neighborhoods, but will also enhance public safety and increase the ability of traffic to be diverted during the construction periods that we foresee coming with the Highway 70 improvements. So I'll answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Mayor, the first thing I'd like to say is thanks, Jeff, for your help with this. I know you sit on the board and you've been working with the board on this. The residents of Evans Mill as well as Blue Water Rise only have one small road at this time to travel in and out of their community. There's going to be some 650 homes built in Blue Water Rise. This dirt road, if we could get it paved, would certainly help with the safety of the citizens that live there, as well as help getting emergency vehicles in and out of the community. So, that being said, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution requesting improvements for County Line Road.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to share with Alderman Astor and the public as well. We had an MPO meeting either last week or week before last, and we saw a not yet ready for public consumption presentation on the 70 James City bypass. It was very interesting, to say the least, on how they're going to do some mitigation of the off-ramps and on-ramps. But one thing that I was pleased to hear when they do the construction, there's almost like two phases, if you will. There's keeping the current traffic flow as one phase and then doing the improvements on another. And I was pleased to hear that they've got a lot of build-ins in the plan, if you will, to allow traffic to keep flowing. They're actually, I'm real hesitant on saying this, but they're actually projecting that some of the improvements that they're going to make during the construction will actually improve the traffic time because there won't be so many stops along the way. So I was pleased to hear that. Again, it's too early to broadcast out. They didn't even give us a copy of the presentation, but we were able to see it. But just one thing, when the inner lane, if you will, while it's being constructed, and when the outer lane is where traffic's flowing, they're actually putting mechanisms in place to where the construction vehicles will be working on the construction side, if you will, not on the regular traffic side. When they want to enter, there's actually stop lights that will allow them to enter and exit that lane. So it was very positive comments we received from that. So
Awesome.
Good.
Thank you.
trying to help the situation as much as I can because it's not going to be easy.
Okay, anybody else, before we do a roll call? Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingham.
Alderman Bingle,
Yes?
Alderwoman Harris,
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 10.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 10 is consideration of the board to adopt a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. Marine Corps Forces Special Operations Command, otherwise known as MARSOC. They desire to periodically conduct training within the municipal limits of the city of New Bern. Those involved in the training exercises will include military personnel, government civilian workers, or contractors. There will be no private citizens that will be involved during these training exercises. The Marine Corps has requested a memorandum of understanding to be executed to document the agreement between the parties, which is valid for 3 years. There's a brief summary in your packet from Chief Summers, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Chief Astor, I know that you had something out there about 5 years ago, and that turned out pretty good. It was pretty successful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You had a joint thing out, emergency rescue kind of. Don't you remember that?
Oh, I do remember it. That was with the state of North Carolina through the what's the program, Danny? With that department, the CERT team as well as the helicopter team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was very successful, and a lot of people enjoyed watching the training session. What is this exactly going to entail as far as training is concerned? And is this military training? And
yes, this is strictly military training. It won't involve the police department or the fire department, as far as I know. It's going to be covert training, and the hopes is that the public won't even notice it.
Yeah.
Where will it be located? Where will the training?
Throughout the city.
Throughout the city?
Mm-hmm.
It's top secret.
I somehow thought this might be more at the rock quarry.
no, this is
Well, they may do some activities there.
I mean, it could be anywhere, but
Yes.
basically,
Okay.
I think it involved telling people and, watching people as they would if they were in a foreign country,
Okay.
but basically doing it here.
they'll keep you posted on what's going on there, right?
Oh, yeah, they let the police department know, yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving an MOU with the U.S. Marine Corps Force Special Operations Command.
Second.
Yeah, you got a second on it. I don't know why. Okay. Well, I'm sure y'all read all that detail there, but I thought I saw somewhere near the Rock Creek, the rock quarry. So you have a motion second for further discussion. Seeing none, so roll call starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 11.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 11 is a resolution to amend the designated agents for Hurricane Dorian. As you recall, resolution was brought before you on the 22nd of October 2019, designated the city's primary and secondary agents for working with FEMA during the Hurricane Dorian claims. That needs to be updated to include myself as the primary agent. There's a memo that's included in your packet regarding this. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Board have questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, we adopt an amended resolution designating agents for Hurricane Dorian.
Second.
Motion and second, is there discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Item number 12.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 12 is a request by staff to adopt an ordinance to establish the Hurricane Dorian Fund. The city is eligible for FEMA reimbursements because of expenses associated with Hurricane Dorian, as it was a declared disaster, federally declared disaster. The city experienced damages and incurred costs for emergency services, utility restoration, debris removal, repairs, etc. The ordinance establishes this fund with an initial budget of $1.5 million, which is expected to be funded through FEMA grant funds. There's a memo that's included from Ms. Mulliken in your packet, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Does the board have questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt an ordinance to establish a Hurricane Dorian Fund.
Second.
Motion and second, is there discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 13.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 13 is an ordinance amendment for Entitlement Cities Community Development Block Grant Fund. The ordinance amendment is needed to recognize additional proceeds and establish a budget for the Entitlement Cities Community Development Block Grant Fund. The most recent grant funds received were for $477,574, which will continue to provide funding for improvements to infrastructure, housing rehabilitation, public improvements, affordable housing, and planning and administration. Ms. Mulliken has included a memo in packet for you to consider, and at this time we're requesting the board to approve this.
Does the board have questions?
Mayor, question. Isn't that amount quite a bit more than what we've received in the past couple of years?
Right.
That includes 2 years.
Okay.
The 18 and the 19 funding.
Okay.
You might.
Yeah.
The
I
mic.
told you to pull
Pull the
that
mic
mic up.
over to you.
It's 2 years funding.
Okay, thank you.
So we didn't get our funds in 18 or 19? Or we didn't get them in those fiscal years?
I didn't get the notification to do the ordinance. I've been working.
All right, this is just housekeeping. Yes.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to adopt an ordinance amendment for the Entitlement Cities Community Development Block Grant Fund.
Second.
Motion and second, is there discussion? Seeing none, let's have roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 14.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 14 is a budget ordinance amendment for the FY 1920 Grants Fund. This budget ordinance amendment is needed to acknowledge the following grants that have been received by the city. The first is $50,000 from the North Carolina Department of Commerce Rural Development Downtown Revitalization Grant. This is used for the revitalization and enhancement of Federal Alley. The second one is $40,000 from the North Carolina Department of Commerce Rural Development Local Capacity Grant. That is to repair fencing along the Riverwalk at Union Point Park that was damaged during Hurricane Florence. The third one is $4,978 from the Walmart Community Grant for the purchase of water rescue gear. The fourth one is $5,027 from the Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant for the use of and purchase of those items. And the final one is $15,000 from the Duke Energy Foundation Storm Resiliency Grant for the hiring of a consulting firm for the development of a mitigation plan. Within this amendment, we also will recognize funding sources not completed as of the 30th of June for $56,000 grant from the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources for the Riverwalk Greenway project. That is under construction at this time.
All right.
So happy to answer any questions.
Board have questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion we adopt the budget ordinance amendment for FY 2019-20 grants fund.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Before we go to appointments, Ms. Shields, do you have any updates on grants or anything you want to make the board or the public aware of? Do you have anything you want to? Come on up here if you
To the
do. or
mic, please.
If you don't, but we always are interested in grants and possible ideas, and if you can think of anything we need to be working on, or Ms. Shields, if you just tell everybody who you are, Margaret Shields, and your address.
I'm Margaret Shields, and I'm the grant writing consultant for the city of New Bern. And we did have Golden Leaf Foundation come last week to do a site visit. We have roughly a $2 million ask to Golden Leaf right now for some infrastructure projects, and we'll hear about those results in December.
Okay.
Are the infrastructures related to stormwater or?
Sewer-related issues and electric.
And electric.
Appreciate you coordinating all that. And anything else we need to be working on, or anything you have any good ideas on the city needs to be?
I am going to apply to the National League of Cities to be one of their resilient cities for 2020. So I'm working on that application right now.
We have a contact when we were at the White House, that gentleman that he mentioned the 100 resilient cities, and even though that we're a much smaller city, he opened that door, so we do have that contact. If you'll get with Mr. Stevens, or I'll have the gentleman's card. You remember who I'm talking about?
Yes, I sure do. And we also have 2 outstanding grant requests that we have yet to hear answers for. I believe one of them was with the North Carolina Attorney General's office to help fully fund our resiliency plan, which I'll talk about that during my comments. I've provided each of you a copy of that tonight at your seat. And the other was
Well, we have requests to the North Carolina Community Foundation right now. So we met with them today.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update. Now let's go to appointments. Alderman Bingle.
Not tonight.
Alderwoman Harris.
Not tonight.
Alderman Astor.
Nothing.
Alderman Bass.
None.
Alderman Odom.
No, sir.
Okay, attorney's report.
Nothing important, tonight, Mayor.
City manager's report.
I have 2 things. As I just mentioned to you, I've distributed to each of you at your seat a draft of our RFQ for the resiliency plan. I've got Mr. Ruggieri here. He's going to go over real quickly just some of the highlights and details of it. But it is pretty much in its final form. We have actually had the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency, some of their higher-ups, take a look at that, and actually it is their intent to potentially use this as a model for resiliency plans for some other communities across the state of North Carolina, so they really like the way it looked.
Well, I don't want to be piggybacking on this thing if we got to foot the bill.
Well, you know, that's the way it goes sometimes. I mean, you know, the big B&B discussion came up, and I know the city of Raleigh and the city of Asheville have been fighting that legal battle for a long time now. So I'm sure they'd appreciate if we were to support it. But either way, Mr. Ruggieri, do you want to go through real quickly just some of the highlights of the resiliency plan RFQ that we're getting ready to send out on the street?
Thank you. Well, I'm sure that I know community's really interested in this. We've been in multiple meetings over time, so I'm just going to read from it. So we get the project description. This is essentially an RFQ to find a consultant to do our resiliency plan. And the purpose here is to create a resiliency framework that focuses on avoiding hazards, withstanding the event, recovery, and to ultimately build back better at 3 different levels. That's at the citizen level, at the business and economic level, and at the city level, the municipal level. We're asking for strategy initiatives that should run the gamut from the routine to and highly feasible to the very ambitious. including social and community health programming, resiliency planning frameworks, land use and other regulatory changes, large-scale infrastructure projects that include the use of green infrastructure practices when feasible. Very specific to New Bern, we are asking consultants to submit to us and pay special attention to reaching underserved populations and ensure representation and participation from socially vulnerable populations and address their needs and their risks. We're looking for innovation and implementable solutions that increase flood resilience in both the short and long term for historic structures, the use of green and hybrid infrastructure solutions where possible, innovative and implementable solutions that increase structural and economic resilience in historic main streets and commercial areas, and ultimately reducing the city's reliance on federal funding following disasters. We're looking for land use changes, specifically as it relates to improved resiliency, and coordination with other regional entities in Craven County and at the state and federal levels. We're asking for a three-part, essentially, response from these consultants. The first part is a data collection and assessment and also a public engagement process. The creation of a steering committee that will establish a meeting schedule and steer the public comment and steer the direction of the plan throughout the process. Asking for a risk assessment. Phase 2 is the analysis and the plan development. Take everything that we've learned from the public outreach and the investigation and assessment of our risks and the data available to us, and analyze that and create a draft plan for us, and ultimately create a resiliency and hazard mitigation plan as the third and final phase. We phased it essentially to allow for clarification on funding sources. Some funding sources will fund different parts of the plan, so we had to break it up that way. But essentially, the result is to have a resiliency and land use plan that's very specific to the city of New Bern, that was created and guided by citizens and elected officials and our professional staff here in the city. Any questions?
No, but I mean, I'm sure, again, depending on your category 1, drainage, all that, just gonna tie in.
Absolutely.
What's the update on that?
Still ongoing. It's a very arduous process, if you want to call it that. It's right now as far as you're talking about the 80 miles of ditches. So there's two different phases. There's the Cat A and the Cat D. The Cat A portion is there's some kind of questions, Q&A back and forth between us and some of the CRC and folks like that, so that we can get that fully prepared and funded and ready to go. As far as the Cat D work, there's a lot of field work that has to be done. All the different locations that are specific permanent works that need to be completed or have been completed thus far, those have to be identified in totality, meaning per linear foot. The coordinates collected for all the 80 miles. So that means someone physically has to go out there and identify those. So it's just it's a process right now.
Okay.
At their request.
Have we prepared the RFQ for the engineer for that?
I believe that is done. I'll bring Matt up for that.
Yes, the RFQ for the drainage work has been completed. It was signed about 2.5 weeks ago, and submittal packages are due tomorrow at 3 p.m.
Wonderful.
Great. That's good news. What else have you got, Mr. Stevens?
One other item. We at the board's request, the city clerk sent out a poll for the 2020 board retreat on various Saturday dates for both January and February. We were unable to reach a consensus that worked for everyone on a date. So I'm looking for guidance from the board as to, do you want to look at different days, as in Thursdays, Fridays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, whatever you want to do. But apparently Saturdays did not work for all parties. So I just wanted to reach back out to the board to see which direction you'd like for us to go with that next.
I mean, personally, I'd like to see us try to do this during regular working hours. That way we would have access to the department heads and any of their supervisors that we may call upon. I think last year, didn't we do it on a Friday?
I believe we did.
Yeah.
It was a Friday half day, and then Saturday maybe 2/3 of a day or something.
Fortunately, for me, I'm not available Monday through Friday unless it's after 5, but I did update. I could do Saturday the 8th or Saturday the 15th of February, because the 22nd and the 29th I will not be in town.
Okay. Do we want to set a date tonight, or
Are we doing it all in one day?
Well, I was gonna say if we could do it, you know.
How come my name's
do
not on
after
here?
5.
How come my name's not on here?
did you send an
You
email?
emailed instead of responding to the poll.
I did respond.
You
By
thought you
email.
thought you did.
But you didn't doodle.
Your comment is noted below, but
I understand now.
So Alderman Bingham, you're available on the 8th and
I'm not on the 8th
I'm-
and the
I'm-
or the
15th.
15th?
No.
Well, we got to do a
Do we
retreat.
want to do
yeah,
a Zoom meeting?
and just keep in mind, the board at the last meeting tabled our schedule of meetings. So technically, we have not set our meetings for the next calendar year either, and typically we like to get those in place and set up. So, because y'all wanted to have this discussion, so once we make this decision, we can get that adopted and finalized on this next agenda. Because we only have 2
I really
meetings.
thought that, last year, the way we did retreat really helped with the budget process and the early adoption of the budget. So, it's soon, it's early, but not too early, because we have some other things going on that we can have one. I certainly don't want to be having one in March, late January or sometime in February. That's what we need to do.
Mayor, Mr. Attorney or manager or clerk, do we have the resolution for our proposed meeting schedule for next year that we could adopt and then worry about the retreat at a later time?
We can. It's not a resolution, it's just a list. So you can adopt that and then
Regular
select.
meeting schedule of the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays. Well, I make a motion that we adopt our regular, for this purpose, regular meeting schedules of the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays for the calendar year 2020, except for December, where we only meet once. The
And
second.
the only other time I'd have to look at the
Budget
list that we
workshop.
provided last time is if one of those Tuesdays falls on holiday, then it was scheduled to meet on Wednesday.
It was in our
Plus the budget
package
meeting.
last meeting, correct? So
It is,
can
and I
our
can
motion
circulate it
be,
real quick.
can our motion be to adopt the meeting schedule that was in our last agenda package?
Yes.
Because we have budget workshops in there too as well, right?
Is that your motion?
Sure.
Second.
Motion second. You want roll call?
Sure.
I have a discussion. Are
Yes,
we
ma'am.
able to change the meeting times back to 7 o'clock?
No, gosh, knows I like the 6 o'clock deal.
I just had to throw that out there.
Just joking. Look, did you see everybody's face go? I think it's been really.
It's late enough getting out
I
of here
know.
now.
Yes, amen.
Any other discussion? Let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Bingham.
Alderman Dingle,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw,
Yes.
Alderman Dess,
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Okay, so what are we gonna do on the retreat date? What are we gonna do? We gonna doodle some more or what?
How many hours is it? An 8-hour?
No, but if we could do half on a Friday, if you could look at your schedule or anybody else, half day on Friday and half day on Saturday or whatever we need, I think that
So
makes it
half day
really
starts,
easier.
we were gonna do 12 o'clock, 1
Yeah.
o'clock?
12 o'clock.
Whenever
If
you
we
want.
could do 1 o'clock, that's my lunch,
Yes.
and then I only gotta go and make up 3 hours of work. So I could do 1 on a Friday,
Okay.
but then the next day has to be a Saturday, so.
Right.
So February the 21st and the 22nd. That was the date
I
that
can't
most
be there
people
on the
do that.
22nd.
I can,
responded to.
I can, in January, you're not available on any of those dates in January. I can,
I think we probably need to hold off on January until we can get a finance director on board. I might not be.
well, but don't you think we're gonna talk about what we need, and then the city manager's gonna, I know, you direct us, but, I mean, if we have that discussion, then he works with whomever he works with.
Is March too late to have a retreat?
I don't know that I would wait till March. It'd be nice. I think we can work with the February date. I think, I mean, I can work with any of those dates. We'll make it happen.
No, I think one of those Saturdays.
Generally speaking, the department heads generally receive their budget documents sometime right around after the new year in January. That's when they start putting their packets together. So that's when they'll have a really, really good idea and grasp of the direction each of the departments want to go. So.
Well, I can work out the Friday, and she's gonna figure out what Saturday she's available, so we can do it that way. If
Yeah,
it's
can we send the
conducive to
doodle poll
everybody.
back out for Friday?
You're not available on any Saturdays, right? Looking at this.
I'm available
In the
on,
first part of January.
no, and I can be the 8th and the 15th. I'm just
Okay.
not gonna be in the state on the 22nd or the 29th.
All right, I'll look on the 8th and see if I can change.
But the rest of y'all, aren't y'all retired? So y'all free?
All right, let's see if we make the 8th of
Or the
February
15th.
work. Yeah.
What about the
fourth?
first?
Just,
The first that you weren't available on. the first.
Okay, I can put okay, we need them.
But
Oh,
look,
you're
there's
not here?
hardly anybody.
Okay.
You're not
All right,
here on the
I'm sorry.
No, that's why I said, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the 22nd was the date that
Well, but if I can change my schedule up, then we'd all be available on the 8th.
On the 8th.
He's not available.
but that's fine.
Oh, okay.
How about 22nd?
No, we've gotta
I'm
make sure that
available
we're all.
on the 22nd.
If everyone is available on the 22nd and I can't be here, that's fine, but I want it to be noted that I'm not gonna be able to be here because I had prior engagements and I don't want my constituents to be upset that I wasn't at this, but I can be there on Friday. Well, no, I won't be able
I
to be
think
there
we should
Friday.
do the 21st and the 22nd then.
I really
What
would
about
like
the-
to try where we could all be there.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer all of us to be there, but the
Bobby,
15th.
did you say you weren't here on the 8th, but you could be the 15th?
No, I'm not here on
Because you didn't do the
You
doodle
didn't
thing,
do-
so I
you
can't
didn't
tell.
do-
I didn't do it. I picked the 22nd.
I know, but did you pick any other dates?
No, because I wasn't available on any of the other Saturdays.
Because you weren't available.
I was not available on, I mean, I'm available on the February the 22nd.
And that's it.
But
Of all the
if you guys
Saturdays.
can be there, I mean,
I'll doodle for you next time. How about that?
So the retreat, I mean, we can't get everything done in 4 hours, or like just stay Friday if we come at, I mean,
how about all day Friday? Would you be able to do
I
that?
can start at 1 o'clock on Friday and stay as long as I need to. Can you work with me on that? Cause
But not on the 21st?
no, I'm leaving that Friday.
Can you do can you do Friday the 8th? I mean, the 7th, Friday, February 7th?
February, yeah, I'm available on that Friday.
On Friday the 7th.
I apologize, guys, I had to go get a job. So I'm not
Shame on
available.
you.
I know, shame on me for having to provide for my family.
So you saying the 7th and the 8th?
Yeah, he's not available on the 8th, but if we could go on the
If you can do the 7th, I'll make myself available on the 8th. I'll change my schedule. Although
I'm gonna
you're
have to I
interfering
gotta
with my granddaughter time.
well, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to hear that. I got to review some
But this is important, so
And no
I'll
one wants
change
to do
mine.
Valentine's Day?
No.
I can do the 7th and the 8th.
Okay, so
We ready for a motion for that? Or-
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion, we schedule a board retreat in 2020, starting at 1 p.m. on Friday, February the 7th. And will we just continue it to Saturday?
Yes.
At City Hall, and then we will continue it to Saturday if we need to.
Can we go to development services?
I thought we do development
Development
services.
services, that worked out really good for us, yeah.
It's part of the motion, whatever it is.
Okay, development services.
That worked out, it was
Second.
comfortable.
Second, motion second, is there discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Do you have anything else, Mr. Stevens, on
That
the
is-
city manager's report?
That is it for me, sir.
That's it. Under new business, I would like to welcome County Commissioner Johnny Sampson and the Reverend Ethel Sampson, and also Alderman Bernard White's back there. And Alderman White, good to see you tonight, sir. Good to see you, buddy. Okay, so starting with new business, Alderman Bingle.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Alderman.
Oh, my goodness. Whoa. Praise the Lord.
Alderwoman
Just
Harris.
wait till the next meeting.
Think about it for a few minutes.
Yeah.
No, I got more than enough
Clench
going
my
on in my
pearls.
ward.
Please don't.
Really, I thought we would be here for another hour. So it's on to me? Okay, well, I got a few things then. The first one is, I have a question for the city attorney. I went to my ward's, one of my ward's HOA meeting, and they have a covenant that is extremely outdated. And one of the questions was if the board was to adopt some sort of resolution or anything, it won't, okay.
Private contract matter. Good question. No.
Okay, cross that off. Do we have an update for Stanley White or anything? Have we heard anything?
Still working through the process on that, but making progress.
Awesome.
Making good progress.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, and then the last thing that I wanted to discuss was obviously we had a lot of individuals come here in regards to talking about CBD and hemp and medical marijuana, and I've had the pleasure of speaking with Max a few times. I wanted to know if the board would be interested in allowing him to be able to do a presentation in December at one of the meetings to kind of talk about facts and different things. I know that he has spoken to a few aldermen, and I know that some of the viewpoints are that, it's not a local issue, but I feel like there's 3 levels of government: your local, your state, and your federal. And if you start at the local level and you have the support of a municipality or a resolution in some sort of support, he's able to take that document to his state representatives to be able to bring that information to the federal level. And I feel like as an individual, my father is a vet, Vietnam vet, PTSD. I suffer from PTSD. We have opioid crisis, a lot of things within the city of New Bern. I feel the least we can do is allow him 15 minutes to do a presentation at one of our board meetings to kind of just give more factual information on the positives, possibly some negatives on what it would be like if the city of New Bern was to support legalizing medical marijuana. So I'm basically making a motion asking that Max Oglesby will have the ability to go on the agenda in December, the first meeting in December.
Second that.
You second that?
I second that.
Okay, you have a motion second. Is there a discussion?
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Attorney, could you clarify, I heard a couple of different things coming from a few of the speakers tonight. Some I felt like were in line with what Max has been discussing. Some I felt like weren't really in line with some of the requests that we've been at. What legally, the city of New Bern can't legally do anything that the state doesn't allow us to do, is that correct?
That's right.
So legally, what is under our purview other than a symbolic resolution stating that we would like to see the state do something?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Which I would add on to that there's plenty of times that we have citizens come here and ask us for resolutions to put a wreath on their door, to do anything. I mean, I feel like, this board, not this specific board, but there's been previous boards that have got entangled with state legislation and, asked people to vote a certain way and did a resolution. So I feel all it is a resolution for him to take to his state representative to say, hey, they do support this or they don't support it, and it's basically to have a conversation or for them to bring it to legislation to legalize medical marijuana. So I'm hoping that you guys will at least allow him the opportunity to
do a presentation.
To do a presentation.
No issue with that whatsoever.
I don't have a problem with him doing a presentation, giving us more information.
Right.
I think that's what we as a board need to do, is listen to our citizens and take a next step. I mean, that's totally up to us how we receive that information, process it, and make our own opinion of whether we vote yes or no on it.
Right, I agree with them.
So procedurally, Mr. Stevens, and we're going to vote on the motion here in a minute, we're just talking. Typically, if an alderman or alderman wants something on the agenda, typically if two aldermen request it, we have allowed it. Is that correct?
It's very interesting. That's kind of been the practice. I think we just did some research not too long ago. Right?
Yeah, this is a presentation that would be different than a resolution.
Right. It'd be a presentation, so not necessarily like a resolution or anything.
So,
I don't.
and
The
I'm
board
asking
chooses
that
to do it, and then they
to say this, that if two aldermen were to want this on the agenda, based on the policy of the board, I absolutely would have no problem with it being presented. If you're asking for a motion in a second, I'm speaking for me, I'm not speaking for the other six. I have researched this quite a bit, and I appreciate the presentations, but I will probably be researching it quite a bit more. I think on a personal level, there are obvious good things associated with medicinal use. There is a lot of concern, without getting into the detail of where that starts and stops, and doctor shopping, those type of things. So I appreciate the opportunity. We're going to vote in a minute, but my vote would not be for this, because I think each and every individual alderman ought to be really, really researching this situation, because owe the citizens the respect of any time they want to come up during 4 minutes and make a presentation to do it. So again,
Just want to make sure we're clear though what we're voting on now. All we're voting on is to
allow
pass
the
a presentation. That's all.
Well,
it is.
you
Is
have
that
two
correct?
aldermen that's already recommended it, so that's
Yes.
really all you need.
I guess we don't need.
We don't even
Then,
need a vote.
well, here again, let's go back. And I'm not in any way telling board members what to do, but if you want to remove your motion in your second, and two aldermen want to ask for this to be on the agenda, I absolutely am not usurping the policy that has been set, that two aldermen can have something on the agenda.
Well, I wanted to make sure, because I know, or there could be a possibility where I can get phone calls and people have questions on why a presentation was put on there. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that that's what I wanted. So I can remove my motion as long as I know it's guaranteed that it's going to be on the agenda.
If you two recommended it, is that good?
I would like to withdraw my motion.
You want to withdraw it?
Yes.
Okay, now, again, Mr. Davis, make sure we're clear on this. Two aldermen, as has been the policy, have asked for this to be on an agenda, so.
It'll be done.
At this point, the clerk and the manager will set that, and that will be on the agenda for
Okay, so
presentation.
for December 10th, me and Barbara would like to okay him to do a presentation.
It'll be on.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Yeah, what else you got?
And happy anniversary to my husband, 9 years already. That's it.
God bless you.
Wow! Congratulations. Y'all are hot tonight.
Go ahead, sir.
Matt, would you please come up and give us an update on the progress with Old Airport Road?
Yes, sir. Old Airport Road, the contracts for what we initially called Phase 2 have been executed by the contractor. They've been delivered over to the city manager and the city attorney yesterday for signatures. I anticipate getting them back tomorrow morning or tonight, and then tomorrow afternoon we have a pre-construction meeting set up with the contractor to make sure everything's lined up and ready to go. At that point, we'll set an initial start date. Hopefully that'll be the next week or two. As soon as we set that date tomorrow, we do anticipate getting with the police department. I've already discussed it with them to get some signs out there letting them know that we will be starting construction. Again, this is on Phase 2 from Carolina Colors through Evans Mill to the bridge by Stonewall Circle. And then as far as Phase 1 goes, we're working with the electric department. They're currently moving some power poles out there to get that project situated to start, and we hope to start that it might be, a month or two before we get that started, but we will start with the first phase in the next couple of weeks.
Good, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, I also wanted to just give you an update on the meeting that we had with Suddenlink and Blue Water Rise community. As many of these board members may know, the Blue Water Rise has absolutely no type of telephone, television, or internet service down there. The mayor and I had, and one other alderman, can't remember, but we had a meeting with some of the management with Suddenlink. They actually promised that they would have services available so that the residents of Blue Water Rise could watch the Thanksgiving Day parade on cable TV. They were very excited about that. But I'm going to tell you, I've been getting daily updates from the residents down there, and there was some 30 days that there was never a worker from Suddenlink on site. I contacted Brenda. She gave me some phone numbers. I made some phone calls. I think they're back on site now. I'm still getting daily updates, and if I don't hear anything from them, I'm assuming that they're on site. But they will not make that Thanksgiving deadline that they promised the citizens down there. So at some point in time, we may have to have another meeting.
Well, so that we don't have to notice and all that for resolution, if the board so would like to direct the manager and with the approval of the attorney that a scathing letter of sorts be sent to Sunlink demonstrating our disappointment and chagrin over the ineptness and ineffectiveness of Sunlink as to future customers that are disenfranchised by their lack of attention and progress on that. Of course, there are others that can word it much better than I could.
I received a, well, I think, you received a letter from a 16-year-old kid that was complaining he can't even do his homework.
Well, and I absolutely, I don't really know how to. I've already answered an email once, and I absolutely am, as mayor, I don't know how to answer about when they'll get it, that I have absolutely no
influence.
No, I just have no, I have no faith. I mean,
I'm very disappointed after that meeting that we had with them and the promise that was made. But there was some, I think 40 days that they never had a worker on site, according to the residents. So you certainly can't meet your deadline if you're not working.
So is it okay, the board giving the manager direction to write a letter of sorts explaining our disappointment? And
sure, and include a flyer for Dish Network and DirecTV in it, and go get a different provider.
I think the word I was looking for was the incredulousness of this situation that, I sat at a table with, how many executives from Suddenlink were there?
There was four
and,
or five.
They verbally told us that Thanksgiving they would have internet and cable.
Yep.
And no action has been had, and they gave us every excuse what hadn't been done, but that they were going to do it, and you've
So
not
why
seen.
can't they get any other service provider?
Well, there's Spectrum is a little far out for Spectrum, but
What about Dish?
well, I don't know a whole lot about Dish, but I don't think you can have internet.
Yes, you can.
without telephones, wires.
You can have it till the cloud comes up.
I don't know.
And you're right in the middle of a report and can't get it out because
Well,
thunderstorm
it just,
comes up.
I received another telephone call actually a day or two ago from one of the residents down there that their child goes to Epiphany, and their child will probably not be able to go back to Epiphany next year because they have not been able to keep up with their homework because it's all on the internet. So I'm just disappointed. I can understand if they were working every day and they didn't meet the deadline. But when you go 30 or 40 days without working and you don't meet the deadline, that's ridiculous. So I would agree and ask that the city manager write a letter to Sudden Link and just tell them how disappointed we are.
Mr. Astor,
Mhm.
for that individual Sprint, it was giving away hotspots. They were doing it, the kids could sign up in school, so see if they're still available within the city of New Bern. They were giving away hotspots
Okay.
to the
I'll pass that
children
on
for
to
free
them.
that were.
They're watching tonight. So
Where did you hear that?
It was all over the internet, but it's locally. I know HJ.
Why don't they put a hotspot out there till they get that stuff hooked up?
Well, why don't we get somebody to donate?
I mean, there's a school
internet?
system that does hotspots for school buses. You know, there's no reason why they can't do something.
Yeah.
So I would ask that anybody that's listening to this tonight has any ideas to contact
Sprint,
us.
can you give them a free hotspot, please? I mean,
There you go.
that breaks my heart that a child can't get their homework.
And there's several of them, you know. And the bad thing about it is they purchased their homes out there without this knowledge.
Right. You know what?
You know, they didn't have this type of services.
What was the company that was here during the hurricane that people had the mobile hotspot? Maybe we can get that information and pass it on to the developers and say, hey, since you are inadequate and not able to provide this, at least pay money to have some sort of hotspot, get these trucks put up. You don't remember during the hurricane?
You know, I think Verizon was in here doing a lot of that stuff, you know.
Well, as a service to our citizens, if the board wants to direct staff to look and see if there's some other means of temporary hotspot, the board can so direct. Seriously.
I see the manager writing it down.
I'm
so I
serious.
think-
Right.
Yeah, I support that.
I do too.
Do we have amen on that?
Yes.
Is that something we want to do?
Absolutely. Whatever you can do, Mark.
Okay, so let's see if we can get another company to provide a temporary hotspot till,
Maybe even permanent,
yeah.
you know.
And
Maybe-
there's no way to no longer allow Sudden Lake to.
No.
Okay.
We lost that ability 10 years ago, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
That's probably Sunlink right now.
And one more thing, I would like to thank our acting finance director for stepping up to the plate. I know that we have just made leaps and bounds with FEMA since you've been in charge, and I appreciate it. You're doing a great job, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord. You got anything else?
No, thank you.
Well, you're doing a good job. all the best.
No, I don't have anything, but just to say thank you to Miss Lori Mulligan. She's always been an excellent person to work with, and she's doing an excellent job. And just thank you for stepping up.
She's great.
Yeah.
Knows FEMA like inside and out.
Alderman Odom.
Yes, sir. Two things. Matt, I know you follow along the Kings Road Communities Facebook page, but there were several citizens that expressed some concerns about the traffic at Yarmouth and Glen Burnie. If you maybe could just touch base with our NCDOT local contact to see what could be done. The issue is the timing of the light is one. There's no dedicated left turn out. You've got the alignment is off from the Harris Teeter side. Some of that's some private issue, but if you could just touch base and see if you could find out if there's anything they're able to do, and that way we can pass it along and share with them. And then the last item I have, we've talked about it before, then I think it went away, and then I wanted to see if we could possibly resurrect the discussion about the 3-laning of Trent Road. There's only just, I consciously tried to count today, there's only like 2 or 3 spots that's not 3-lane. I think the reason that we sort of got turned off is because when the number came back, it included widening of those few spots as well as repaving the whole thing. If we could maybe look at just widening like they did behind Columbia Development, let's get a turn lane in there, because from a safety standpoint, there's a lot of traffic now conversing along Trent Road. If we could look at those few spots and get a cost of what that would look like.
Okay, we'll put that together.
And that's all I have.
Okay, do we need a closed session
I
tonight?
have one more.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
So, so this governs Ward 6, 2, and 4. The sign Village Woods, that's all, it's like by all of us. One of our constituents came to us and wanted to know, it was built or put in there in 1985. The sign when you're coming down Amherst, it says Village Woods. They wanted to know if the city is able to like replace it, because the wood is molded and it's in city limits, and it was put there in 1985
By the city?
by the developer, but the developer is no longer. They were wondering.
Just kind of update everybody else so you know exactly what we're talking about. There is a sign that was put there by the developer. It is not one of your typical red, white, and with the city logo on it signs. It's just a regular neighborhood sign put there by the developer. It is in poor shape. I'll give her that for sure, but it's
Wood. I mean, how
I
much
think
do you
if
think
she'd
it
have
would
called
cost
me
to
or one of
replace
the HOA members would have called me, I would have told them it's the HOA's responsibility.
She knows, but she was wondering if the city would be able to help.
Could we replace that sign with one of our standard city signs like we have in other neighborhoods? It's on a city right away, correct?
We could. What we've done in the past here most recently is we don't put those signs in any longer. We've just recently put one in for the Dryboro community. They raised the funds, they paid for it. We managed the ordering of the sign and installing it, but they paid for it.
How much is it, do you know?
Because of the way the signs are made, don't quote me,
Pretty expensive.
$2,500.
Yeah, they're pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
this
would-
one
I would
is
say
just
what
wood.
has been our practice is if it was existing, they were kind of grandfathered, we'll repaint them, we'll do that kind of stuff. I don't know when that program was started, how it got started or whatever.
For city signs.
Yeah, for those, well, they're city signs, but they're city signs for those neighborhoods.
Right.
But from that point on, it was kind of like Matt said, if the community wants to raise the funds, then we'll put that sign up. But they were very expensive. They're redwood cedar signs is what they are.
Okay. I will relay that information back to our constituents.
Probably the best we can do on it, if they provide the sign, the city will install it, is that correct?
They will, and I'll tell you, just to pass along one more thing we've done here recently with the Kings Road community, is they've got one of the red cedar wood signs that they wanted updated and painted. And just with the amount of work we've got going on right now, they asked if they could partner with the city. We actually provided the material to them, took the sign down and took it to their location. They restored it themselves at no cost to them. We provided the material. And that's probably something we could do to partner with that community if they wanted to go that route, but.
Are you saying it's the same type of sign?
It is not.
No,
Oh, it's not.
not for that
It
one.
is not.
Yeah, this one's wooden.
Yeah, this is just a regular wood with the name painted on it.
Okay.
While we're on the subject, I'll just bring it up. I get a lot of complaints from primarily folks in Greenbrier. It's the McCarthy Court sign as you go into the McCarthy Square where most of the doctor's offices are. It's a city island, but it's a private sign that the developer put in. Same situation there as well. So if we could maybe figure out if there's a letter or something that we can send to the developer that put the sign in and say, hey, look, can you update this? I know it doesn't meet our minimum housing code, or it's not a nuisance, but.
Oh, can you do that from our sign too then? Are we able to, do you guys have on record who the developer was in 1985 for Village Woods?
I don't, but I will tell you, most of the time when the developers have the picture, it gets turned over to the HOA. As far as McCarthy Court, I don't know if they would have an HOA. So I think that one there's going to be a little bit more of a difficult situation to address.
Common area.
It's on the City of New Bern Island. Did you enter?
It's on the media when you turn right there on McCarthy.
I think as far as the one in McCarthy, if the developer has no ownership and responsibility at this point, if it becomes a nuisance or if it becomes a hindrance to traffic vision at that particular intersection, that maybe a letter be drafted to the people within that medical complex or whatever you want to call it, to say, hey, if y'all want to update this sign, y'all need to come together. But ultimately, if there's no HOA or none of that stuff, I mean, we have the right to remove it if it's in our right of way.
Okay, need closed session tonight?
Yes, sir, I got three matters. Two pursuant to 143, 1311A3, to maintain our attorney-client privilege to discuss State of Martha Harris versus City of New Bern, as well as branches of New Bern Inc. versus City of New Bern, and another matter pursuant to 143-1311A6 to discuss a personnel matter.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, is there discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Do y'all want to meet in here? or-
Yeah.